In this video, I'm going to break down the exact 4 muscles, or maybe even 5, I'll add a bonus one in there, that you need to be focusing on in order to build an attractive physique. Now, these 4 muscles are what are, the main focus to get that V taper. Most people like to, maybe neglect these muscles, but also just, not prioritize them. And I believe that once you start to prioritize these, you can sort of fast track yourself into getting that V taper, that good aesthetic physique that you see on the For You page, you see on the Explore page, and the physique that obviously women like to admire. So the mistake that most men make when it comes to working out is believing that all muscles are created equally. And to be quite honest, they're not. Now, every muscle is trained the same way in order to grow, whether it's your calves or your shoulders or your abs. You need to attack it with intensity and progressive overload. However, there are certain muscles that you don't want to focus on that we'll leave for another video. But there are specific muscles that you need to prioritize. And once you prioritize these muscles, you can actually have that aesthetic physique. I will highlight the fact that it doesn't really matter if you aren't lean. The main priority for most of you guys, because the majority of the population are overweight, it should be getting lean. These muscles are sort of the cherry on top of a lean physique, and it's what's going to give you that nice V taper. So this is going to be in a particular order, and number 1 is going to be the shoulders, specifically the side delts. Now, the reason you want, big shoulders, you want to focus on this muscle is because of the V taper. Now, again, being lean is very important, but having wide shoulders are going to accentuate that ratio between your shoulders and your waist, and that is the direct thing that women are attracted to, that specific ratio. I think the number is around like 1.6 to 2, 1.6 to 1 and 2 to 1 ratio. So this is 1.6 and this is 1. Those are the most important things when it comes to building that V taper. It's the shoulders. Some people will like to blame their genetics and say, oh, I've got narrow clavicles. Okay. Even if you have narrow clavicles, I'm someone who's got narrow clavicles. I'll probably pop up a video here where you can see that in effect. But your shoulders should still be a focal point, even more so if you have narrow clavicles. Some people are genetically blessed where they do have wider clavicles, and therefore they get that 2 to 1 ratio more easily. But either way, wide clavicles, narrow clavicles, shoulders should be the very, very, very main focus. Now, when it comes to building the shoulders, the main exercises that you want to focus on are going to be the shoulder press and the lateral raise. Now, the shoulder press, does work on the front delts, but it also does work on the side delts. There have been recent studies, or people have done their own studies with electrodes, and they figured that there is as much side delt activation doing a heavy shoulder press as there is with the lateral raise. Does that mean you should do one over the other? No, I think you should do both. I think that, they kind of serve a different purpose in terms of intensity, and you should focus on both, therefore. So you want to always do within the range of 5 to 8 reps for optimal hypertrophy. That's muscle growth for you guys that don't know. But you want to be within that 5 to 8 rep range, and you want to make sure that you are pushing with intensity, whether that is on the shoulder press or on the side delts. The specific exercises you could do to train the side delts, well, that's going to be down to your preference. You can do dumbbells, you can do cables. If you're fortunate enough to have a machine like I do, I will always use the machine. In terms of stability, it's better. And that same principle applies to the shoulder press. You can do dumbbells, you can do barbells, you can do a machine press, you can do a military press. They're all good, they all function similarly, and it doesn't really matter which one you do as long as you push it to intensity and you achieve, some proximity to failure. So now you've built the shoulders, the next muscle you want to focus on are going to be your lats, right? This again accentuates that V taper physique, especially if you have narrow clavicles. This is going to sort of force your shoulders and your body to appear as broad, especially from behind. When you look from the rear, you want to be able to see that you've got that V taper, that Dorito look, and that is going to be the upper lats. I'm probably going to put a video on screen where you can see my own lats and see the effect it has on a physique from behind. And yeah, just like the shoulders, they're as important, but the shoulders does just take that #1 spot. Now, the exercises that I recommend in order to build lats, there's going to be 2 variations, because I did mention 2 variations. You're going to have ones that do this and ones that do this, right? The first ones are going to be your pull-ups, your lat pull-downs, and your lat pullovers. The same principles apply in terms of 5 to 8 reps, close proximity to failure, and progressively overloading them to build that physique. And then when it comes to doing a tucked elbow row, you're going to focus on things like a cable row, a machine row, barbell row, anything, even dumbbell row. Doesn't really matter. As long as your elbows are tucked and you're pulling, heavy weight, you're going to build that muscle. The third muscle that you're going to want to focus on when it comes to building that, aesthetic V-taper physique is going to be your chest. Now, a lot of people misunderstand when I say chest. I mean the upper chest. Reason being, this is the part of the chest that allows you to build that shelf. It allows you to have a physique and a chest that pokes through t-shirts. And it's the thing that sort of women notice. There is no point in building a lower chest. You end up just having like these saggy man boobs that no one really wants. I don't know if I can find any examples of what that looks like, but you don't really want it anyway. So focusing on the upper chest, yes, you are still going to get mid-chest activation, but you're going to build a fuller looking chest, that sort of shelf-like look that can be seen through vests that you might even be able to see in my top here. That should be the main focus, upper chest. So when it comes to building the upper chest, there are a few principles you want to understand. Many people think that, you can just do an incline, right? The problem with doing incline is it doesn't actually target the upper chest. What you really want to focus on is shoulder adduction. And simply, in basic layman terms, that just means keeping your elbows tucked close to your body and forcing your sort of shoulder to adduct and push your chest forward. There is, many videos out there that will show you how to do that. I'll probably pop one on screen of me doing a good form. Now, again, it doesn't really matter if you're doing dumbbells. It doesn't really matter if you're doing it on a machine. But if I had to pick one that will target your upper chest the best, that's going to be the Smith machine. I do put it on a slight incline as it's easier to, target the upper chest in that sort of scenario. But the idea is you want to keep your elbows tucked and you want to be driving sort of from your nipples is probably the best way to describe it. Again, you can see on screen what that looks like. You can do this with cable flies as well. You can do this with dumbbells, barbells, Smith machine, if you're lucky enough to have a machine that lets you target the upper chest. But the main focus should be keeping your elbows tucked. A lot of people like to flare their elbows and that just hits the mid chest and you're not really going to get the upper chest bias that allows you to build that big juicy chest. The fourth muscle that you need to build in order to have that nice lean aesthetic physique is going to be your abs. Now, a lot of people are going to tell you, I used to be one of these people, your abs are revealed in the kitchen, and they're absolutely right. However, that doesn't mean that they're not subject to growth and that you can't have more visible abs at slightly higher body fat percentages by training them. You see, I'm going to put a video on screen of myself at around 11% body fat a few months ago, and you can sort of see that my abs aren't fully visible. Now, I would have told you then, it's genetics, or I just need to get leaner. But in reality, it's because I didn't train my abs. If you train your abs, even if you are, 11, 12%, they should be entirely visible. However, if you don't train them and you neglect them, even at 10%, they're not going to be that visible. And it's simply because, like any other muscle, you want to, force them to push out through the fat or skin that you have. The same principles applies to shoulders, same principles applies to your arms, your legs, whatever muscle group it is. Now, in particular with abs, there's exercises that you do want to do and exercises that you don't want to do. And that's simply going to be, in order to build that lean, that aesthetic physique, the one that has the V taper, you want to really focus on your six pack, your abdominals. That's going to be achieved through doing cable crunches, leg raises, V-sits, pretty much anything that's going to allow your, your sort of chest to come to your knees, or your legs, or, your thighs to come to your chest. That's going to really build the six-pack abdominals. Now, the part of the abs that you want to neglect, or at least not train as hard, are going to be your obliques, or your sort of side areas, if you don't know what I'm talking about. The reason for this is you don't want to create a bulkier waist. This is going to apply to those guys who even more have a narrow clavicle and wider hip ratio. You really want to sort of not train your obliques as much, because you're just going to accentuate that, that blocky look. And that is not what we're going for. You want to have the nice aesthetic V-taper physique. And by training your obliques, you're just going to have that blocky waist, and that's not what we want. So those are the 4 muscles that you should really focus. But I'm actually going to add in a little bonus muscle that, most guys neglect. And you cannot, and I repeat, you cannot neglect this muscle. That's going to be your legs, right? Now, I'm not saying go and get bodybuilder, big ass legs, right? I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that you don't want to have toothpicks. You don't want to have a top heavy physique. You'll look stupid. You're on the beach, you're wearing shorts, you'll look like an idiot. You really want to make sure that your legs are at least keeping up with your upper body. You don't want them to overtake it. You just want to keep them equally balanced. Again, your legs are half of your physique. So, that's how important they are. But those are the sort of 4 and the 5th bonus muscles that you want to focus on in order to build that, that lean aesthetic physique. And if you are someone who needs more coaching, someone who wants to actually get one-on-one help, whether it's nutrition, accountability, gym, there's a link in my bio. You can book a call with me and I can see if I can help you out.